Welcome back to Tipton Bros. Today, we'll be reviewing one of the most undervalued and effective fighter aircraft of the Second World War, the Yak-9. Development, history, and usage in combat will be provided, along with specifications and tolerances. If you would like to see similar content in the future, let us know down in the comments. I plan to continue this series as Soviet aircraft tend to be neglected and overlooked for more iconic designs of the period. Before we begin, I must disclose that I am no expert and never claim to be. Information, while widely available, can be conflicting, so I'd like to apologize for any errors I may make. Now, let's get into it. The Yak-9 was designed by its namesake, Alexander Sergeyevich Yakovlev, a Soviet aeronautical engineer. Alexander would go on to found the Yakovlev Design Bureau, where all further Yak-pattern aircraft would be devised and manufactured under his watch. While Yakovlev successfully designed an entire family of aircraft, to cover the lineage of the Yak fighter aircraft alone would be an arduous task. So, for the sake of time, I will briefly cover the Yak-7, then transition into the Yak-9. The Yak-7 was the intermediate linkage between the Yak-1 and the Yak-9. Designed in 1939, the UTI-26 platform, later to become the Yak-7, was in production alongside the Yak-1. The UTI-26 was a two-seated training aircraft that would give pilots the chance to familiarize themselves with the operational capabilities of a fighter before being thrust into the Yak-1. The UTI-26 would later be referred to as the Yak-7V for fixed gear models and the Yak-7 UTI for those that still retained retractable gears. Remember, by this point, it is still a two-seated training aircraft. Engineers were prompted by Yakovlev to adapt the two-seated trainer into a single-seated fighter. Conversion began immediately, with a lone example being fitted with two 7.62mm Shikaz machine guns within the engine cowling and one 20mm Shavat cannon mounted to the propeller. Several other elements would accompany this rearmament, making it more suited to the role of a fighter. Self-sealing fuel tanks, reinforced wings, and cockpit armoring, amongst others. The excess space from the spare seat was not deleted, but rather used as storage, which further boosted this aircraft's versatility. Designated the Yak-7 M105P, this aircraft would quickly prove superior to the Yak-1, leaving Soviet authorities scrambling to begin production. The Yak-7 M105P earned the latter half of its name due to its engine, the Klimov M105P, a V12 liquid-cooled engine that produced upwards of 1,050 horsepower. The armament would remain unchanged from its initial testing, using one 20mm Shavat cannon and two 7.62mm Shikaz machine guns. The Yak-7 had a service ceiling of 30,000 feet, a climb rate of 2,400 feet per minute, with a maximum speed of 347 miles per hour. At just over 27 feet in length, with a dry weight of 5,461 pounds, the Yak-7 was an ideal aircraft at the time. Acting as a close support fighter, the Yak-7 would see sizable production up until 1943, with a total of 6,400 being manufactured. The Yak-7 would see a variety of updates throughout the war, creating many different variations on this aircraft. Now that a simple groundwork has been laid for you to further understand the platform, we will move on to the Yak-9. The Yak-9 has too many variants to list, ranging from different engines to armament to fuel tanks, so I will focus on one, the Yak-9U. The leading change in my mind between the Yak-7 and the Yak-9 is material. The Yak-7 used a duralumin body and laminated wood for wings. The wood would be treated with a hardening agent when compressed, making it similar in function to a rigid carbon fiber. While not as ideal as duralumin, it was a perfectly serviceable cost-saving measure. In the summer of 1942, the availability of duralumin would spike in conjunction with the development of the Yak-9. The Yak-9 would be manufactured using an all-duralumin construction. This would decrease the overall weight of the aircraft tremendously, opening up a world of possibilities for modification. The Yak-9U, in particular, the VK-107, again named after its engine, is arguably the most well-known and finest variant of the Yak-9. Previous iterations utilized the Klimov VK-105 and VK-106 engines, while the Yak-9U employed the newest Klimov VK-107A, a V12 liquid-cooled engine with a much higher power output. Extra yield was achieved by revising the crankshaft and camshafts, while also incorporating a brand new design for the supercharger. The VK-107A was rated for an impressive 1,500 horsepower. The service ceiling topped out at roughly 35,000 feet with a climb rate of 3,280 feet per minute. The Yak-9U could push upwards of 417 miles per hour when at an optimal power altitude, making it one of the fastest production aircraft in the world at the time. It would only later be surpassed by the P-51-B, that could reach speeds of 440 miles per hour. Armament will receive a slight bump, retaining the single 20mm Shavat cannon, but replacing the two 7.62mm Shikaz machine guns for a pair of 12.7mm UBS machine guns. The 12.7 by 108mm round proved to be a potent mixture that would wreak havoc on the Eastern Front. The Yak-9U would be immediately thrown to the wolves, figuratively and literally, as it would face the A3 and A4 model Focke-Wulf 190 during the Battle of Stalingrad forward. Not only did the Yak-9 go toe-to-toe with the Luftwaffe, but it would shift the balance of air superiority in the East. While not leaps and bounds ahead of its competition, the Yak-9U could consistently best its adversaries, the Focke-Wulf 190 A4 and Messerschmitt Bf 109G, amongst later models. Interestingly, in 1945, a Yak-9 scored a hit on a Messerschmitt Me 262, downing the aircraft. As to how impressive that is up to you. The Yak-9 would go on to be the most produced variant of all Yakovlev fighter aircraft, with 16,769 units being completed. The Yak-9 would go on to serve France, Poland, Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, and finally, Korea. Production of the aircraft would halt in December of 1948, and the Yak-9 would be officially retired by the Soviet Air Force 2 years later in 1950. The final official use of the Yak-9 and its variants were by the aforementioned Korean Air Force until 1955. As a side note, the Yak-9 has one of my favorite paint schemes for any aircraft of the Second World War. The Soviets settled upon a matte blue-gray for the topside paint and an eggshell blue for the plane's underbelly. While there are a multitude of different camouflage patterns that were applied to the Yak-9, this one to me has always been the most appealing. If any of you are curious, the names of the paint are AMT-11 and AMT-7. Today, there are 4 known surviving examples of the Yak-9, with the closest being the Yak-9U, displayed at the Museum of Flight in Seattle, Washington. I hope you've enjoyed the short overview of the Soviet Yak-9. I will surely be following up with other aircraft from the Yakovlev family, along with further designs originating from the USSR. We are a small channel, so a like is greatly appreciated. Again, I am no expert and never claim to be. Until next time, on Tipton Bros.